I'm honored to speak with you and share what I've learned from 20 years of counseling clients to help you navigate these challenging personality types so that you have some tools in your toolbox and your feathers might not get as ruffled. I really believe that feelings are waves of energy that we experience in the body. So how about those toxic people? You know who I'm talking about. I had a girlfriend that I would get together with her for brunch every few months. And I realized every time I came home, I had to take Advil because it was a toxic relationship. It was not a mutual or reciprocal friendship. She was kind of venting to me, and I was absorbing it and then getting a headache. So we need to be aware of how difficult people affect our feelings and how we experience those in the body. And we can learn how to manage those differently, those feelings of frustration or irritation, which are a normal response, right? We're human. So if somebody upsets us, it's normal for us to have those feelings, but we can learn how to manage them in a way that best serves us and keeps us healthy and well. Difficult people also affect our thinking. They can cause our thinking to become negative, almost like an infection. And we can start to look at them with judgment and become angry. So paying attention to our self-talk. In therapy, we talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, which really says that our thoughts precede our emotions and our behaviors. So if we can change our thinking, we can change our feelings and behaviors. So we're going to give you some tools to do that today. Understanding your role. Whenever you have a conflict with someone, there's an event. There's something that happens. And I love the work of Eckhart Tolle. He wrote The Power of Now and A New Earth. He's brilliant. He says that an event is always neutral. It just is what it is. It is our thinking that makes it either positive or negative. So we want to be aware of what our perceptions are. What are our thoughts that are going through our head? What are our assumptions? What are our biases? And we want to take into account our cultural biases and be mindful of those because we all have biases. And then our role, we have the choice in terms of how we respond. We cannot control other people. As a therapist, I've had a lot of people on my couch talking about other people. I've done it myself. I think we all need counseling at different points in our lives. And the first time I was in counseling, my mother starred in the counseling sessions. And the second time I was in counseling, I talked all about my ex-husband. And it wasn't until I started to talk about myself that my life began to change. We can't control other people. We can't control their responses, their behaviors, or their actions. We can only control our own. So I want to empower you to work on that because the more that we can better ourselves, the more skilled we can be at dealing with these difficult people. I really believe our emotions are a normal response to our nature and our nurture, always. And while it may seem sometimes that people are over-responding, it's often because whatever that event is tapping into a whole well of feelings that they have from old stuff. And it's all coming out. So it seems disproportionate to the event, but it really is a normal response to their own unique history. And meditation is like rebooting your mind, body, and spirit. It just clears your operating system so that you don't have all those windows open and feel stressed. And it helps you become aware, to become mindful of the feelings that you have in your body. You can become more aware of where you're holding energy in your body. We all hold stress or anxiety, worry, tension, and becoming aware of how we're experiencing that gives us emotional intelligence because we understand when we're triggered. We understand when we're not in a good space. And then we can learn how to take pause and respond differently. Conflict or stress is an opportunity to learn new skills. I love the expression, "Come wind, help my roots grow strong." Did you know that trees need the wind? They need the wind to grow their roots. And for us, when we deal with difficult people, they can cause us to grow. I think about an old boss that I had that was really difficult. She micromanaged, and she put me down at every chance that she had. She would tell me I didn't look right, I didn't write right, I didn't speak right. It was really upsetting and pretty demoralizing. And I wish I had the skills that I have today through practicing and making mistakes when I was dealing with her in my 20s. But what's interesting is I ended up leaving that job because it was not a healthy environment for me. And I'm so grateful for her, because if she hadn't been that way, I might have stayed at that job. I would have never started my own business. Their anger becomes diffused when they feel heard. So sometimes people just up the ante and they get louder if they're not feeling heard. So you might not agree necessarily with their responses, but you can reflect that you understand where they're coming from. As my business developed, I learned that managing my leadership team was one of the most important skills that I had. They were my greatest resource. Very, very talented people that I wanted to stay in the organization. And they didn't always see eye to eye with each other or with me. And my main job became managing those relationships so that everyone felt heard, that I could draw upon their strengths, that I could diffuse any conflicts. And that was really important for the success of our organization. And also defensiveness, just making excuses. We could all save each other a lot of time if we learned how to not be defensive and to take responsibility for ourselves. I always say that healthy self-esteem is midway between diva and doormat. So the diva is somebody who is kind of entitled and not very respectful of other people's boundaries. And the doormat is not very respectful of his or her own boundaries. And so in the middle is the diplomat. And that's that person that's able to be respectful of themselves and somebody else. And that affects how you communicate. The narcissists actually have low self-esteem. And in order to compensate for their low self-esteem, they're peacocking. And they're acting arrogant and grandiose. But truthfully, they don't feel so great on the inside, and they're pretty insecure. With the narcissist, my own personal strategy is I start out by letting them know how I recognize how important they are. I recognize how smart and talented they are, and I do that so that they don't feel the need to continue to tell me. And it helps. It saves us all some time. So you don't want to argue with them. You want to have some realistic expectations. Narcissists are not good at empathy. That's part of the issue. They truly cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes and imagine how they might feel. Dealing with difficult people, it matters what the power differential is. It matters what your role is. You're going to respond differently if the know-it-all is your kid versus your boss. If you're a supervisor and you have a young budding narcissist on your team, you might acknowledge what they've done, but set a boundary. Like, okay, you've done well, now we need to acknowledge other people. There's some diplomacy in setting limits. And again, it's that diva doormat thing. You want to hang on to your confidence and set limits and boundaries with them. I was once at Target, and the woman in front of me was screaming at the cashier. She was really rude to him. And he handled it so well, he just continued to check out her items and responded perfectly professionally to her. And when it got to be my turn, I said to him, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that woman was so rude to you. And you're amazing. How'd you do that? How'd you stay so professional and calm and cool and collected? And he said, oh, I don't let anyone in my head who isn't paying rent. That's detachment. It doesn't mean we don't care. It's just that we're separating ourselves a bit from that person. We're not giving them the power to determine how we feel about ourselves. The procrastinators are really frustrating. And did you know that procrastinators are often perfectionists? And I heard a man speaking about perfectionism recently, and he said, done is better than perfect, which I think is really smart. And all of us can be procrastinators at some point, and it's really frustrating. My friend Ross and I both have pretty significant egos sometimes, and we sometimes clash, and we'll have a difference of opinion, and he sometimes will say, hey, Joyce, can we just reboot? Which really requires both people to let go, and the bully may not be willing to do that, but you can certainly ask, like, hey, it seems like things are kind of escalated. Can we take a break from this? Forgiveness is a way to move through interactions with difficult people. Again, that compassion, that empathy, and forgiveness, if for no other reason than for yourself, it helps you free yourself from anger that keeps you tethered to the past. Thank you so much for your time.